Hi, scholars. This week we are going to be learning about an artist named Kehinde Wiley. We are going to be learning about Kehinde Wiley for Black History Month. Kehinde Wiley's artwork is some of the coolest artwork I've ever seen, and I can't wait to tell you more about him. After we learn a little bit about Kehinde Wiley, we're going to watch some videos of him speaking, and then we are going to create some artwork inspired by his artwork ourselves. So let's get started. Who is Kehinde Wiley? He's an American portrait painter. This is a picture of him here, and this is a picture of him as well. He was born and grew up in South Central Los Angeles, and he now lives in New York City. I'm going to play a clip right now of Kehinde Wiley talking to us about why his artwork relates to him and why it's important to him. And as he's talking, I want you to pay attention to the artwork that you see in the video because that is his artwork.
The Dogon Couple is easily one of my favorite paintings out of the Africa series. What I had to do was to contend with the fact that I'm an African. I grew up here as an African American. My father actually is from Nigeria. He returned to Nigeria before I was born. And so my sense of Africa is at once very American because I grew up in California, South Central Los Angeles in the 1980s. But it's also the sense of someone longing for a country that never really was part of his existence, longing for a father who was never there, longing for a sense of authentic attachment to Africa, the real Africa, not the one that's received on television. And that's, I think, what gave rise to the Africa paintings. Sure, they're pointing to the European colonial past, and sure, they're pointing to very specific works of pre-colonial African art. But I think in that is also a type of longing to be authentically related to the continent itself. And it's a really hard thing to articulate because many of us know what the African American narrative is. Many of us have this sense of a kind of back to Africa mentality. But this isn't a stance. This isn't a trope. This is my life. And it's my life writ large in large paintings. It's my life imagined through young sitters who are then taking on the pose of the Dogon Couple. It's the Dogon Couple, a painting that is inspired by sculpture from a completely different group, in fact, from Senegal. What does that do? It's kind of like this gumbo pot where flotsam and jetsam, parts of different desires and needs, all arrive at the same time, at the same spot on this painting. But I think, again, it comes back to the twinning, the doubling. It's about them, but it's about me. It's this dual presence in the painting.
Okay, so we got to see some of his pieces of art, and I will show you some pictures as well. You got to see the background of his artwork, which is filled with different patterns and different kinds of plants and all these different things. We'll talk more about that in a second. So the next thing is I'm just going to explain how he makes his artwork. So he takes inspiration from old master paintings. Those are paintings that were made before the 1800s, a long, long time ago. And he replaces, it's usually a white, powerful man in the painting, and he replaces that man with a young black man in hip hop or urban attire or clothing. And sometimes the pattern backgrounds that he paints are influenced by the painted man's culture or the country in which he's traveled to. So Kehinde Wiley travels a lot, and sometimes he paints different people from those different places. Okay, oops, let me play so you can see. So he's known for creating vibrant portraits of young black men and women, and his artwork in museums uses the power of images to remedy the historical invisibility of black men and women. So he's putting black men and women in these powerful poses, and his artwork is really powerful. So the next clip I'm going to show you, he is talking about his paintings. So he's going to tell you a little bit about his process and how he goes about doing it. I want you to pay attention again to the figures or the people in the painting and also the background of the painting.
This painting actually is a perfect example of what my process is. The model that you see in this painting is a young man that I met in the streets of New York City. Most of the models that you'll see in my paintings are complete strangers. So I'll come up to them and ask them if they have an interest in posing for me, which most people say no to. Turns out that approaching complete strangers in urban areas puts people's guards up. And so I've evolved a practice over time of showing examples of my work, trying to convince people of the merit, the history. Uh, I invited him back to my studio, and he went through art history books. And what we happened upon was this portrait of a nobleman named William von Hyacinth. What I'm doing in this painting is playing positively with the history of art, but also positing the image of what it feels like and looks like to be in America during this particular time period. It's about this sort of jump in temporal space between the original object and who and where we are today. The body language is one of absolute authority and defiance. But I think it also looks quite different when transposed onto a body in the 21st century. These young black men now occupying this space, once the exclusive terrain of the powerful and the rich. That shift between who gets to be in these pictures and why, I think, is the real meat of this project. Oftentimes, when you look at a painting like this, you'll also consider scale. The size of these paintings matters as much as anything else. What I want to do for the viewer is to have an experience in which they're being possessed as much as the painting possesses the sitter. The camera, when I'm shooting the model, is always just a bit lower than eye's view, so that when you're looking at the painting, you get that sense of awe that was originally intended for these paintings. What I'm doing is I'm playing with the language of power that has existed in Western easel painting for hundreds of years. And I'm trying to use certain aspects of that to my own purposes.
Okay, so he talked a little bit about his artwork, and now I'm going to go through just some more examples of his artwork so we can get an idea of and get inspired for what we're going to make in our artwork. So this one is Portrait of Barack Obama, and it was made in 2018. You can see it almost looks like a picture. He's so talented the way he paints. This one's called Portrait of Samuel Johnson, and it was made in 2009. And he has so many paintings, these huge, huge paintings, but I just picked a couple of my favorites and a couple that had different backgrounds so you guys could get some ideas. We are going to be creating some of these backgrounds, making a print. And if you were at Empower Hour last week, you got to try making the prints, so you'll have a better idea of how to. If you didn't, that's okay. I'm going to show you how in the next video. This painting is called Shantavia Beale II, made in 2012. Let me move myself out of the way. There we go. This one's called, oops, did I skip one? Yes. This one's called Two Heroic Sisters of the Grassland, made in 2011. He showed this one in his video. Very interesting background. And I talked a bit about the background, but we are also going to be making portraits, meaning drawing pictures of ourselves. We're going to make some self-portraits, so you have that to look forward to as well. This one's called The Two Sisters, made in 2012. And you can see how some of the background comes into the front of the painting and in front of the figures. So my last slide here is another picture. And I wanted you to think for just a minute, what inspires you about Kehinde Wiley's artwork? Think, think, think. Maybe it's the background. Maybe it's the powerful poses his figures are in. Maybe it's something else. I want you to think about what inspires you about Kehinde Wiley's artwork. So when we meet at the next video, we are going to be creating a background to our artwork, we're going to be creating prints as our background, and then we are also going to be creating self-portraits. So we have a lot to do today, and I'm so excited to get started. Everybody say Kehinde Wiley. Kehinde Wiley is who we are learning about, and meet me at the next video and we will get started on our artwork.